The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. After making the crossing to the other side of the sea, Jesus and the disciples came to the land of Gennesaret and tied up there. As they were leaving the boat, people immediately recognized him. They scurried about the surrounding country and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. Whatever village or town or countryside he entered, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch only the tassel of his cloak. And as many as touched it were healed. The Gospel of the Lord. Today is the memorial of Saint Scholastica, who died in the year of 543. She was the twin sister of her brother Benedict. Benedict was the founder of a monastery in Cassiano. Some might say Casino, but I think it's Cassiano. And they were twins, and more is known about Benedict because he was the abbot of the monastery. And shortly thereafter, Scholastica similarly left home and founded a group of sisters within just a few, maybe 5 miles of where the monastery where Benedict lived. Again, not a great deal known about her life except from the writings of St. Gregory the Great. And the story that you most often hear, they would only meet once a year because of the Benedictine rule. Hard for Benedict to break his own rules. He couldn't leave the monastery because that was one of the rules, that they had what was called stability, that they would stay stable in the one place. But once a year they would meet in a barn, as I'm told, somewhere in between the two monasteries. And again, you'll recall the story that Benedict was quite intent with the 2 or 3 other monks with him. He would not dare, travel alone. Interesting that there's no mention that other nuns were with Scholastica, but a great thunderstorm came up, and Scholastica asked her brother if he would simply stay with her over the night. And he said, well, no, I got to get back to the boys. Okay, the other monks. And then she asked God, and God granted her prayer. And Benedict said, well, what did you do, sister? I asked you a favor and you refused. I asked God and he gave me what I asked. Now you say, well, that's kind of brother-sister, right? But they were twins and they both really had a heartful pairing, twinning, if you will, love for God. And when they got together only that once a year, they talked about things of God. And I'm sure Benedict can only imagine that Scholastica modeled her community on the Benedictine rule formed by her brother. So we honor Scholastica today as we continue to pray for those who give themselves to the contemplative life. Again, it's an invisible life, right? But imagine if they weren't there. All the prayers that they pray for the church, for the world, for people, for parishes, for priests, for men and women religious, for you and for me. So we recognize Scholastica today in the name of all those who give themselves to the monastic life. Kind of refreshing to hear from the book of Genesis after a couple of weeks now from the letter to the Hebrews. It's a familiar story, and perhaps all too often we don't appreciate the unity and the symbiotic unity of all creation, how it all so beautifully and intentionally fits together. I can remember nearly 30 years ago an article in U.S. Catholic written by Dr. Brian Swim, astrophysicist, and he said, I'm still impressed all these years later, this whole Big Bang theory, a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second faster, and all of it would have blown into nothingness. And to that same degree, slower, it would have imploded into nothingness as well. There's an intricacy, a unity, that symbiotic interrelationship of all that is. So it comes to mind, for instance, in light of my reflection yesterday, maybe you pondered after Mass, your love for God, your love for yourself, God's love for you, your love for yourself, and your love for others. There's a symbiotic unity of how all that mysteriously, and more correctly said, mystically fit together. Think about that in light of creation. Think about that maybe in light of today's reading, your creation. You were created. We were all created. We're creatures. We're not the creator. I know you know, and you know I know the biology. We all know where babies come from. But think about yourself as a baby. Maybe you probably don't remember that. I don't either. But maybe you have the earliest memory when you were perhaps a toddler. The one picture that I have, I think it's in my Bible, I'm 9 months old. We had just moved from Dearborn, where I was born, actually born in Detroit, but lived in Dearborn for the first year of my life. And then there's this, my little beautiful self, 9 months old, sitting on the front porch of our newly purchased house, $35,000 as I recall. And I don't know why, but I don't remember myself, but I had that cute little, baby thing on. But then when can you remember your created self at 10? I'm big now. Did you ever say that? Oh my, and your aunts or uncles would come over, oh my gosh, you're so big. And then your 15-year-old self. Maybe you liked yourself at that time, maybe you didn't. Things were changing. 19, 20, 25, 35, 40, 50. How far should I go? Think of yourself as your created self. You're made. And you've been remade how many times? In the grace of God, the grace of your biological growth as a body, your spiritual growth, your maturing in human development of your personality, and your spiritual self, your soul, your heart, your desire for God, your longing for God, your maturing in the life and the embracing of the Holy Spirit in Jesus. It's a worthy reflection, isn't it? Probably not today or in these days necessarily, but I hope there's times, maybe in warmer times of year, when you can go outside and just sit. I know many of you garden, or you have gardens, you have backyards, and maybe you can use that place as a place of prayer. We're much more aware in this generation of the environmental tensions, global warming, climate change, carbon emissions, and just a 2 or 3 degree change. Amazing, right? But when it's 69 in your house, oh my God, it's freezing in here. You turn it up to 71. Oh, now it's really nice. 2 degrees, 3 degrees. But when that happens to the earth, a lot changes. Flowers, bugs, birds, foods, the way seeds open and the way they interact with the soil. It's an amazing intricacy, isn't it? And if we say it about creation, how about you and I? The intricacies and the intimacies of our own biology, our chemistry, and the chemistry, if that's the word, probably better said, the grace of God in us. The gospel fits in today because Jesus is that beautiful act of recreation. The power of Jesus to heal is a recreation of God against the disorder of sin and the disruption of evil that's so evident in the world. One day it'll all be made whole again by the action and the person and the life of God through the person of Christ. Personally, emotionally, can you feel the energy in this reading? People immediately recognized him. Probably seen him before. Then they scurried around, they ran around like crazy, around the whole country, and began to gather the sick on mats and bring them to where Jesus was. Look at the human energy there. Look at the love. They didn't have a CVS or a Rite Aid on every corner. And when someone like Jesus could heal as powerfully and completely as he could heal, look at the energy if you carried somebody 3 blocks or 3 miles so that you could lay him in the path of Jesus and that ill person could just touch the garment of his cloak and be healed. Amazing. That's also the power and the intimacy and the intricacies of God. I hope there's something there you can ponder today, maybe about your own life, your own body, your own human development from a child to the mature adult that you are now. Maybe just a time of gratitude today to give thanks to God for you and for creation. I'm aware of creation itself, all the Animal Channel and Discovery channels now. And I read an article, some time ago, a few months anyway, 6-8 months, National Geographic, the sensitivity of elephants and all the killing of elephants in Africa for their ivory. And elephants are very sensitive, and there's a sanctuary for elephants there. And they would take these orphan elephants, and they're just little guys or girls, and they would nurture them, and it was hard to keep them alive. They could feed them. They finally found the right formula of milk that they could take, but it was hard to keep them alive because of their sadness and separation from their mothers. I know we say, and it's hard to argue, that human beings are the pinnacle of God's creation. I think that's right. But I also believe that it doesn't mean we can or could or should diminish the beauty and the dignity of all creatures. We know the intelligence of dolphins, for instance. And those are just 2 examples. God's creatures, ants. You realize how important ants are? I know you don't love ants. But they're critical to the symbiotic reality of soil and earth. They're one of the strongest beings on earth. Getting to be a biology lesson, right? Maybe that's enough. Find something in there you can be grateful for. Do it. Make God smile.